When you're using your favorite app, you're tapping into this hidden world of, well, dozens, sometimes hundreds, of tiny services all working together behind the scenes. So how in the world does all of that stay organized without just collapsing into total chaos? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the unsung hero that makes it all possible, the API gateway.
To really get this, let's start with the problem. Okay, imagine you're building a massive application. Behind the scenes, you've got microservices for everything. User profiles, product inventories, order processing, shipping. We're talking 100 different specialized services. Now, how does the app on your phone actually talk to all of them?
Well, if the app has to connect to every single service directly, you get this. Yeah, in the industry, they call this the spaghetti mess. And you can totally see why, right? It's just this tangle of connections where your app needs to know the exact address and the exact language for every single service. You make one tiny change on the back end, and the whole thing could just unravel.
And here's the real problem. This direct approach creates huge headaches. Your client app becomes incredibly fragile and way too complicated. It's got to juggle all these different network addresses, maybe even different protocols. Security? It's an absolute nightmare, because now you have to protect every single tiny service individually. And trying to update or reorganize your backend services, that whole process is called refactoring. And in a setup like this, forget about it. It's almost guaranteed to break everything.
But what if there was a better way? What if, instead of hundreds of different backdoors, your entire system had one single intelligent front door? Well, that's exactly where the API gateway comes in.
And I absolutely love this analogy because it is just so perfect. The API gateway isn't just any old door, it's a smart doorman. It intelligently manages every single thing coming in and out, making sure only the right traffic gets to the right place, safely and efficiently.
And wow, this visual right here says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got that chaos we were just talking about. But on the right, you see order. The client app makes just one call to the API gateway, and the gateway handles all that complex chatter with the backend services. It just completely transforms that chaos into something clean, simple, and actually manageable.
So, if we're going to get a little more formal about it, an API gateway is just that, a single unified entry point. It's basically a special server that sits right between your users and all your services, acting as the central hub for every single request that comes into your system.
Okay, so what exactly does this smart doorman do all day? Let's break down some of its most critical jobs.
First and foremost, it's a traffic cop, a router. When a request comes in, say to get a user's profile data, the gateway knows exactly which of the 100 microservices is in charge of user profiles. It intelligently directs the traffic, so your client app doesn't even have to think about it.
All right, next up is security, and this is a huge one. Instead of trying to secure every individual service, you put all your security in one place, at the gateway. It checks for things like valid API keys or login tokens to prove who you are. It's your main line of defense. If a request doesn't have the right credentials, sorry, it's not getting past the doorman. Simple as that.
And finally, it's all about managing the crowd. You've got something called rate limiting, which basically stops any single user or client from overwhelming your system with too many requests. It's just like crowd control at a popular club, making sure the system stays stable and available for everyone by preventing abuse and managing the load.
Okay, so that's all great for the system, but what's really cool is what this does for the actual developers building the app. It doesn't just make the system better, it makes building on top of it way, way easier.
For a front-end developer, life just got so much simpler. They don't need a giant map of the entire backend anymore. All they need is one consistent address to talk to, a single prefix like /API. So they can make a really simple call to an endpoint like /API/call system and just trust that the gateway is going to handle all the magic.
So let's actually follow that call. The developer's simple request hits the gateway first. Then the gateway does all the heavy lifting. It authenticates the request, it finds the exact backend service it needs to talk to, even if that service's location changed yesterday, and then it forwards the request. The developer, they're completely shielded from all that internal complexity.
So when you add it all up, the benefits for the devs are just massive. They get one stable URL to work with. The backend team can update, move, or totally refactor services without ever breaking the front-end app. And everybody gets a single place to monitor and understand all the API traffic. It basically decouples the client from the backend, which is just a fancy way of saying they're not tied together anymore. And that is a huge win.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. Why is this pattern so fundamental to how we design modern applications?
You know, this table really nails it. The API gateway directly solves the biggest challenges you face with microservices. You've got system complexity, the gateway gives you a single, unified entry point. Worried about security risks, you get centralized authentication. Need reliability and scalability, you've got things like rate limiting and load balancing. And for the developers, it just abstracts away the backend and makes their entire workflow simpler.
So really, if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. The API gateway isn't just a nice-to-have. It is the essential layer that makes these complex, distributed systems actually work. Now sure, that means the gateway itself has to be rock solid and super reliable, but it's also the very thing that allows modern apps to be secure, manageable, and ready to scale.